All right, folks, we are back. It is time for another edition of the High School Huddle, your one-stop shop for everything and all things Section 5 sports. I'm AJ Feldman. He's Carl Jones. The spring sports season finally getting underway. All the kids back from spring break. The weather doing its normal thing where it's good, it's bad, it's good, it's bad. Wasn't the best here in Rochester for the big eclipse on Monday, but I know those who stayed there in Rochester, you got treated to a little bit of show. Carl, how was your eclipse experience?
I ain't the biggest eclipse dude, so I just looked up in the sky and I just saw that it got dark. So it was cool for me. But I'm excited that a lot of other people were excited about it. Just to see all the fanfare around it and how people were like, "Oh my gosh, this day they've been waiting for a long time." So it was cool to see everyone else be excited about something. But for me personally, I viewed it as a time where I didn't have to work for like 30 minutes. Like I just see everyone else in the building running around and panicking for a second. While I on the other hand, I'm like, you know what? I get to, be glad for a little bit and run outside and join the rest of the coworkers. But it was cool to see it, even though it wasn't the full experience that other parts of the country got to see.
Yeah, our sports team somehow got spared from our wall-to-wall eclipse coverage, so we thank the powers that be for that, especially myself, because I was someone who got very excited for this eclipse, and I was trying to figure, obviously Rochester in the path of totality, but things got a little cloudy Thursday, Friday, the forecast was getting progressively worse. Woke up Monday morning, turn on Channel 8, see what James Gilbert has to say in the morning. He's like, it's not going to be good here. You know what? Go up to New England, go over to Ohio. And I said, say less. Got in the car, drove 3.5, 4 hours over to Cleveland, went to the, I believe it's called the Great Lakes Science Center or something like that, right by the waterfront, where it's a nice, cool little area there. You got the Cleveland Browns Stadium. Obviously, Carl knows this all, being from Cleveland. He's got the Cleveland Browns Stadium, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was a nice outdoor setup. There were thousands and thousands of people at the John Glenn NASA Center was there too, or it's also there. So really fun to experience that with a bunch of people. Then I decided, you know what? Let's not fight the traffic. Let's go to the Cleveland Guardians home opener. So I went to that too. They shut out the Chicago White Sox, as most teams usually do these days, and it was a great time. I some people describe, people are crying, people are changing their lives after seeing this eclipse. That wasn't exactly the case for me. It was just really gosh darn cool, and I highly recommend, if you ever get a chance in 21 years in 2045 or to travel elsewhere, to see this thing in person, because it was indeed really gosh darn cool.
Yeah, I know a lot of people up here in Rochester were upset about the clouds. Like I wasn't asking everyone around, but just I know at the News 8 building themselves, they were like, "Oh, is there a chance one of the clouds can peak a little bit, like the sun show its face for a little bit?" And it didn't happen. Even they were holding out hope, even though the weather team was like, "Nah, I don't know what y'all getting your hopes up for. It's not gonna happen." But I know that Rochester themselves, and I think a little bit of Western New York, west of us, and then I know Syracuse got a little bit of sunshine. But I know the Rock themselves were very upset about it. But I mean, like you said, stick around another 21 years, hop in your truck, hop on a plane, and go view the next one.
Yeah, it really was cruel irony. Not only the fact that Rochester was squarely in massive cloud cover all day long. Well, for the eclipse rather. Sunday, gorgeous day. Tuesday, another gorgeous day. Just really Western New York weather, Rochester spring irony that, it just did not come together. But hey, the rarity makes it that much more special. So the next one, if you decide to go out to it, will be that much more impressive. So spring sports are back in business. Like we mentioned, some teams, especially the baseball and softball teams, a lot of them went away down south for break, so they got to enjoy that. Lacrosse has slowly been ramping up. Teams got about 3 or 4 games underway. Other sports, of course, kicking off their seasons as well. With, the thing with spring sports, we only got a month, 6 weeks left until sectionals, so the spring sports season always creeps up on you really fast. Let's go into some of our spring sports headlines that you're going to find only here because the DNC is on strike. Our spring sports headlines. Carl, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the McQuaid boys lacrosse squad. All right. That up in Class A. They're 6-0. They're one of the few teams that have gotten to play 6 games so far, and they've taken advantage of it with that undefeated start. When you look at it, it's like a gradual progression on how this team has gotten better over the past 4 years. 7-6 in 2021, improved to 12-6 the next year, and then last year they were 13-4, and then this year, obviously, off to that impressive start. But the names at the top are the names that are recognizable for me. Obviously, Johnny Football, aka Johnny Harding, doing his thing as well. He's a really good football player, as I just alluded to, with 30 points. AJ Quagrello with 31, and then also Vincenzo Giangreco. Sorry if I butcher your name right there, also with 29 points. His brother, Dominic, is doing his thing in goal as well. So the little brother tandem balling out for the Knights over there. But they just had an 8-7 win over Pittsford. So clearly this isn't like a flash in the pan, like good record, but let's see what they do when they play up against good teams. They're right in that weight class. So you want to see if they can continue to do this throughout the season. And they've never won a brick. And I know that's wild to say, like a McQuaid private school. Oh my gosh, like why can't they get a brick in section and can't get a brick up in lacrosse? I think that says a lot about the quality of lacrosse up here in Rochester. But nonetheless, is this the year they can get it done? They're off to an impressive start for sure.
Yeah, it's always tough to gauge, McQuaid, especially teams like that, the private schools who do play a lot of out of Section 5 competition already on their resume so far. A win against St. Francis from the Buffalo area. They took down Loveland. They took down Nichols. I think Loveland came from pretty far away. But that McQuaid victory, or excuse me, that Pittsford victory, really impressive. Just looking at the box score here, they were down 4-1 after the first quarter. They then score the next 7 goals to really pull ahead from Pittsford. Then they hold on for dear life. Pittsford scores 3 straight, but they get it done there. That's a really impressive win. Other contenders so far that are probably going to be in Section 5 this year, Rush-Henrietta, they've got coming up in just a little bit, so that'll be another good test for them. Other teams in Class A, Fairport at 2-2. You've got Penfield at 3-1, of course. So there's going to be some tough competition, but that'd be quite the story if McQuaid can finally get their first sectional championship there in Class A this year.
Anytime I get to see Johnny Football, aka do his thing on the lacrosse field, I want to go out there and see it. I'm impressed so far with what I've seen/heard.
Johnny Lacrosse these days over for the Knights. For my early season headline, I'm going to go over to Pittsford and the softball pitchers tearing it up in the diamonds so far. These are 2 names that should not be too unfamiliar if you follow the High School Huddle, if you follow Section 5 softball. Lily Goldberg for Mendon and Petra Hunt for Sutherland. Both those teams undefeated so far. Not against the stiffest competition in the world, but here's some of these stats. Lily Goldberg, here's her starts. 14 Ks, 12 Ks, a 15K 2-hitter, a 7K 1-hitter, a 10K 1-hitter, and a 14K performance. Pretty gosh darn good. Then Petra Hunt, she had a 1-0 victory over Eastridge where she only allowed 2 hits. They took down Spencerport 8-4, and then it took down Greece 12-2 where she allowed just 3 hits. So both of these pitchers are doing phenomenal things so far for their team so far. Undefeated. Both these schools kind of disappointing last year in sectional play. They were the 1 and 2 seeds respectively in their class. Mendon lost in the quarterfinals, getting upset in the first round in the 1-8 matchup to Mercy, I believe. And then Sutherland losing to HFL in the semifinals. They were the 2 seeds. So both of these schools obviously have a lot to prove so far. Like I mentioned, the schedule's not super impressive. I don't know if any of these, certainly the Section 5 wins, are going to jump off the page so far, but it's softball. You got a great pitcher, you can go really gosh darn far, and both Pittsford schools have 2 really good ones to start the season.
Petra's just a freshman, which is wild to say because I remember as an 8th grader, it was like this. Oh my gosh, like Sutherland has this impressive pitcher. Like let's see how much she can contribute, and she was doing her thing. Like I don't want to speak out of turn here. She might have been doing it as a 7th grader too, but I don't want to give her that much credit. Regardless, she was in middle school last year balling out for the Knights and continue to do it this year as a freshman. It'll be a sight to see what she does in the future. Then obviously Lily Goldberg. I know every week last week you could have been on Section 5 best player of the week, but we got to share the love because you're so darn good. You're so darn talented as a pitcher. But not surprised, those 2 young ladies are off to an impressive start, and it'll be like this for the rest of the season for sure.
Yeah, our Section 5 best segment is starting back up this week. We will see if any of them. It's really is like a break glass in case of emergency. Like you can't find enough players. You know what? Lily Goldberg probably had. She struck out the whole gosh darn team. She also had an immaculate inning down in Florida. I forgot to mention that. So 9 pitches, 9 strikes, 3 strikeouts. When you're that good, you tend to do things like that. All right, Carl. Headline number 2. What you got for us?
Girls flag football, and it's not just one team in particular, but it's just the entire sport has really grown. 31 teams this year, which is a huge number considering where they were just 2 years ago. Obviously, when they first started, there wasn't really a sectional championship type of deal where they were going on and playing in regionals and competing for a state tournament. Well, this year there are 3 classifications: a Class A, B1, and then B2. And the one thing that I noticed, and I was talking to Carrie Glacier from Primetime 585 about this, is that the introduction for, especially for the spring season, of a lot of these city teams that necessarily don't have the resources to have spring sports season for young ladies, for example. Like maybe they don't have the resources for a lacrosse team, or the only sport they really feel like they can dive in is track and field, and not everyone is going to want to be at a track meet all day. So having the opportunity to play another spring sport where you can be competitive in. Not everyone also that has the capabilities to have a softball team either. That's another sport that maybe some of those young ladies don't have the opportunity to play. So flag football, I know East has one. I was at their game where they played against Mercy, Rochester Prep. This is a couple off the top of my head. Monroe, I believe, is at the top of Class B1 right now, which
Yep,
I know they got a
undefeated
couple
2-0.
young ladies that they're really tough too, from what I've heard. So regardless, the whole sport is growing. I encourage you guys to check one out one time. Like the game isn't watered down. Like if you ever just sat there on the sideline, they're saying the same terminology that the tackle football is being played with. I remember meeting with the Penfield coach last year about it, and he was like, yeah, like the same terminology and lingo I use for the men, I mean for the boys, same thing I use with the ladies. Like obviously they're not out there hitting, but run a slant. Girls will do that. Like, go and drop in deep third coverage. Young ladies will do that too. Go guard like, so it's really cool to see. And I'm very excited that they have the opportunity to play football as well.
And plus, if you're one of those people who likes to complain about the way the NFL is heading these years, you can get some more like ammunition for your argument. You can be like, this game's turning to flag football. It's just like when I saw Penfield took down Thomas last week. So, add some spice to your criticisms. The one thing I will say, criticism of flag football, we got to get rid of these ties. We got ties in flag football. I think I've spotted 2 of them already so far this season on the standings. I get if you don't want to do a whole drown out thing, but I'm pretty sure they have like an extra point system based, kind of like the XFL, like a 1 point, 2 point. Let's just do a little extra point contest, kind of like they do in college football at the end. Let's get rid of these ties. That will get me out to more games if we don't have any ties anymore.
I'm right with you on that one. That's an easy one. I understand going up and down the field and maybe a lot. Extra point system. Solve it right there. Bingo. Commissioner AJ entering the chat.
Exactly. And the games aren't long, so it's not like we're out there forever. We don't have to worry about injuries too much, long overtimes. Obviously, they ain't hitting. So I'm just saying, get rid of our ties here. I'm going for my next headline, and this was our primetime spotlight team of the week. But just because their performance that I was at and the Iglesias was at, Canandaigua girls lacrosse 4-0 on the season. A pair of headline victories so far. They took down Pittsford 8-5. They were down 4-3 in the half. They came back. They scored the next 4 goals to really take over that game. Then they take down a really talented, always talented HFL squad 15-9. Always a Cougar squad, which I believe is won, 11 out of 12, 8 in a row, some crazy stats like that. The Cougars down in Class C. They took them down 15-9. They're getting it done with a lot of different players so far. Hannah Davis, 11 goals, 9 assists. She's a senior, which is crazy to me because I remember covering her when she was like a freshman, running around with her big sister out there. And now she, is, the big woman on campus there. So that's kind of a little scary to see for myself personally. I'm starting to get old here. Samantha Lufton with 11 goals, 2 assists. Nola Weaver, Leah Sheridan, both with 7 goals. And they got a seventh grader on the scene so far. Kiera Giuseppe, she had 3 goals and kind of a lopsided win against Brockport. But when you get a 7th grader in the box score, certainly worth noting. She also is on the Alpine ski team there at Canandaigua, which she went to state. So clearly a really talented athlete. Canandaigua is obviously, of course, going to be in the mix in Class B. They're going to be a strong contender to Victor as they bring back a lot from that two-time defending state champion team. So it will be tough to unseat the Blue Devils, no doubt about it. But Canandaigua off to a strong start. They seem like a team that can challenge the Blue Devils in Class B.
Yeah, when you look at the statistics of what they lost from last year, obviously Hannah Davis is far and away. I mean, she had 94 points. She can do that for just about any team in Class B. But they only really lost Liv Shore, who was a pretty good midfielder last year for them, and then Kohler Neiman as well. Maya Herman also was on the lacrosse team for those at home. Really good basketball player on the court. So this was a young team last year. I do remember talking about that youngish team to a certain extent. Brought them all back. You got Hannah Davis, who might be the best here. Who knows? She ain't the tallest thing out there, but it do not matter. She'll go out there and dominate. They do not mistake her size for weakness whatsoever. Lord have mercy. I realized that quick. When I got here, wasn't the biggest lacrosse guy. I'm still learning as it goes. Oh, she's not that tall. Like, how is that going to hurt her? It don't. So if y'all casual like me, please do not say, oh my, how good is she? Don't worry. She'll remind you in like 15, 20 seconds of how talented of a player she is. But yeah, the team's off to a solid start. She's leading the way, and that Canandaigua Victor game is always going to be something that we look forward to from the outside looking in.
Yeah, and Victor so far on the season, they were really highly ranked in our national polls and such that they played two really tough out of area competitions so far, Cold Spring Harbors and St. Anthony's High School. They lost both of those games. Cold Spring Harbor currently 15th in the entire country so far. So I'm not going to really ding them for that. It seems like they're just going out and playing really tough competition. But it's not like they went 2-0 against them. So certainly, there's going to be a lot to be said in Class B before things go along. That Canandaigua Victor game is just 11 days from now on April 22nd. So one that we will certainly be at that game all the way out in Canandaigua, of course, because it seems like anytime Canandaigua has a big game, it is in Canandaigua. But I think there's a pretty darn good chance we'll be out for that game.
Can't wait. Like I said, that's something that we all lacrosse fans, all high school spring sports season fans look forward to that one for sure.
Yeah, and Victor and Canandaigua on the boys, they're playing tonight. So that is one game to watch. For some other games that we're keeping our eye on, Carl, why don't you lead us off with the game that's coming up in the next couple of days that you've got circled on your calendar?
Staying with the boys, we got Irondequoit heading over to Penfield. Penfield, both teams are 3-1. Penfield up in Class A, Irondequoit in Class B. So this isn't a sectional preview or anything of the sort. But just one team that's a measuring stick for each other. The undefeated in Section 5 play, lost to a couple teams out of the area. Where do you guys rank in terms of your classifications? Obviously, and down in Class B for Irondequoit, Victor's, for the most part, is going to be the class down. It's going to be the cream of the crop. How close can you guys bridge that gap to a certain extent? Penfield led by Adam Shembry. Remember him from the football field. Dude was tough as a nail, tough as rocks, like I swear. So I imagine that same type of mentality is going to translate to the lacrosse field. And then also Cooper Moore leading the way for Irondequoit with 15 goals. I just looked at his stats. He's a sophomore and he's been playing since an 8th grader. And he wasn't just out there on the 8th grade field, like out there as an 8th grader, just doing cardio. Like as an 8th grader, my man had 57 points. So he's a solid player. He's doing his thing. He had 3 goals in a sectional semi. So it's like, all right, like my man is actually kind of tough, and he's going to be one of the guys to look out for going forward here in Section 5 as one of the top guys. So good measuring stick game to see where each team lies in the area.
Yeah, this Irondequoit team, a team that we talked about a lot last year, kind of a little bit of a resurgence of the Eagles. Some really great seasons back in, the 90s into the 80s, the 2000s. Their last sectional championship was 2012. They're trying to build something over there. And the Eagles coming up clutch in that victory against Hilton so far this year. Primetime was out at that game. We were able to run the highlights because of it. They were down 11-8 with less than 4 minutes to go. Cooper Moore scores twice to get within 1. Oliver Grisdale with less than a minute to play to force overtime. And then Mr. Cooper Moore with the OT winner. So Irondequoit already tested so far. Their only loss is in overtime. So the Eagles, certainly a team we're going to be keeping an eye on. And that game there is going to kind of see exactly where they stack up. I'm going to a game tomorrow, 5 o'clock, girls lacrosse, Penfield at Rush-Henrietta. Kind of another who's who game. Both of these teams in Class A, so very much could be, certainly a playoff preview, maybe even a sectional championship preview. Both of these two schools off to some good starts to the season. Rush-Henrietta, they really took care of business against Thomas. A tough loss to a tough West Jenny team. And then they took down Fairport 8-7, a really impressive victory against the defending state champs. Penfield, they suffered an 8-goal loss to Victor. It happens, but they only lost by 4 to Cold Spring Harbor, who we just talked about. They beat Bethlehem, they beat Northport, so they're 2-2 on the season so far. Top players. Rush-Henrietta, kind of a balanced attack. Kate DeWald with 9 goals on the season, and they have 5 players with 5 or more goals so far this season. Penfield led the way by their sophomore sensation, Peyton Rothfuss, 11 goals and 2 assists on the season. Their next best player has 4 goals on the season so far. So a really nice, good Class A measuring stick. RH has some good tests ahead of them as well next week. So both of these teams are going to kind of be figuring out where they stack up so far this season. And with only 5 teams in Class A so far, or not so far, in Class A this season, you know, you're going to get familiar with these teams real quick come playoff time.
I was trying to figure out how old I was, AJ. You talk about how old you felt. I was like, does Rush-Henrietta still have a Robert sister over there? They do. She's still over there doing her thing. And she's a senior at this point. But I had to look at a couple other names. I'm like, all right, who's still here? Kate DeWald. I know Danielle Garrett was a good player who might have been featured on Section 5 Best a few times last year as well. So a few familiar faces that are reminding everyone who they are this upcoming spring for sure.
I think there was there an Allie Garrett? Does that sound right? Maybe in the past?
That sound right too. Yeah,
Garretts.
That might have been who it was. I don't know if it was Daniel. It was a Garrett. I remember talking about a Garrett. No, it was number 16 probably. That was on the Royal Commons last year. It all blends together as you keep doing this job. But I do know there was a Garrett out there. Danielle, Allie, whoever that was.
Yeah,
sure.
Allie Garrett led the way in 2012 or 2022 in goals. So we're starting to remember things, Carl. We're picking up things. Look at us go.
Let's give it a little pat on the back right there for that one right there. Shout out to us.
Yeah, Avery Roberts graduating from RH, and another name that we all remember as well. But yeah, spring sports season kicking up. But before we fully turn the page on the winter sports season, we are working nonstop on this Primetime Elite Awards, the thing we do with News 8 and Primetime 585. That is going to air online from 7 to 8 o'clock on Tuesday. That is Tuesday. I'm going to look at my handy dandy calendar. It's on Tuesday the 16th. So that's where you can watch it online. It'll be available on the web after the fact as well. And then you can catch it twice on our broadcast. Saturday, prime time, 8 to 9. That is Saturday the 20th. And then it'll be airing again Sunday, April 28th, 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. So a great opportunity to award and recognize all these great athletes. And we're going to be involved in the show this time here. So we get to be in on the fun, Carl.
Yeah, dope. So if y'all was missing us last time, don't worry. We heard you. We heard all y'all. We back. Don't worry about that. But yeah, it's always cool to just at the end of the year, you write down all the accolades. You're like, man, there's some really darn good competitors here. And obviously trying to split some ties and decipher who's who and what's what. But regardless, got some really talented people that we can't wait to broadcast and show what they've done this past year, because it's some talent here in the Rock, as y'all already know.
Yeah, heavy hitters in every single category. It was never a question of trying to find a kid. It was trying to choose between like 3 or 4 different kids. So definitely you want to tune into that. We will be back next week here on the High School Huddle as we get in one more show before the NFL Draft 2 weeks from now, which we'll be taking a day off for that as we head out to Orchard Park. But until then, we will see you next time. For Carl Jones, I'm AJ Fellman, Apple Podcast, Spotify, RochesterFirst.com, and YouTube. It's now time to break the huddle. We will see you next time.